Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Maya on the show. Maya is an emotional abuse survivor from multiple abusive relationships. Maya shared some of her story with me, and my first thought was how impressive it was that she took the time to educate herself after she got out of her abusive relationships, and has also put a great effort into not repeating this pattern with another abuser. So welcome to the show, Maya.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Hi, this is Karen. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. Do you mind sharing a little of your story of your first emotionally abusive relationship?
Yes. So I met my then husband, well, I was 18 and we dated for about 4 years and then had a child, got married. I was married by 23 and the first couple of years were amazing. And I just remember the first 2 years almost seemed perfect. We spent a lot of time together. He was very attentive, very available for me. And then after those first 2 years, I felt like it never got back to what it initially seemed to be. We stayed together. We were together for 20 years. And throughout the marriage, something was always off and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I love an emotional connection. And I felt like I could never get that with him. And he initially was just everything that I wanted. I guess you would call more of like a love bomber, somebody who just meets your every need. And then once they get you where they want you, they're just not, you don't have like that connection. So we had a child before we got married, married shortly after that. And, we moved in together and we kind of worked different shifts. I worked nights and he worked days, which because I wanted to be home with my child during the day, I didn't want to do daycare. And so it wasn't great for a marriage that we worked opposite shifts, but the relationship itself, the emotional piece, but the connection was missing with him. And so I didn't really want to be around him. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just like blacking out. I think I just read through everything. Like in my last relationship, I just read through my notes and it just kind of all hit me because I haven't revisited that in a while. And I took, really good notes of what was happening to me. I was kind of working through that cognitive dissonance where I was trying to get out of the relationship, but yet I was still being pulled towards, do I still want to be with him? Do I still love him? Will I miss him? Will I be miserable if I make this decision to leave? And I had to write down notes of what he was doing and the absurd things that he would say to think logically about it.
Yeah,
like
Karen, you did that too, right?
I mean, I do that to process. Yeah. Journal. A lot of journaling helps me sort through things.
Yeah. And, I'm not a big journaler, but I'm starting to be. But when I was going through this, like, it was such an emotional hurricane. I feel like it was so up and down. I had to start writing things down because like within that is, there's a lot of gaslighting. So if you're not writing things down.
Yeah, that's what really validated me is like, he would tell me, you never said you were sorry for that. And I'd be like, I didn't. And then I go back and look at my journal. I'm like, I clearly wrote it. So I'd look back and I'm like, it is really validating. And when that's going on, that's really helpful to do.
Yeah. I had to write down everything too that he did after I got out. Otherwise I would have just forgot because I block things out. The only way I could cope is by blocking it out. So I had to write it down so that I know that this happened. These events happened, so I get it. Was that in your first relationship or second one we're talking about?
So that was my second relationship. But as I was kind of preparing to talk today, I went through it and it just blows my mind that I allowed myself to be treated that way. Just blows my mind. And I was reading it as if I had a daughter and she wrote that my heart would be broken. Like, unbelievable that I would just allow myself to be treated that way and still kind of have this feeling of like, but he loves me, but he said this, but he did this. But you just can't see clearly when you're in the middle of it.
No,
So
you
just
can't.
so important to like pull yourself back and take time away. So anyway, that was, I think, just, I read through all that and that's where my mind is right now. But as far as my first marriage, it was like the next thing to do, I feel, to get married. I remember thinking when I got married, turning 23 that night, that, well, it only has to be for 18 years because then my son will be 18, and like, what a horrible thing to think.
Right.
So I
Oh,
really
that's what I
wasn't.
thought too.
Yeah, I just truly wasn't, I don't think I was in love with him anymore, but this is the road, this is my path, we were going. So, basically I felt like the marriage was just kind of like maintenance, I mean, we had good times here and there, but our values just did not align at all. And I guess I didn't do a lot of reading and research back then, so I couldn't really figure out what was wrong, what was actually wrong in the relationship. I remember I don't advocate for listening to Dr. Phil, but he had a book out at that time and I bought his book. And one of the things I remember is writing in there, I don't feel a connection with my husband. And when he touches me, I feel like my skin crawls. And I wrote that down, and looking back now, the problem was there was no emotional connection. I couldn't connect with him emotionally. He didn't want to talk about things. He was very passive aggressive, those little digs he would say to me to keep me down. I mean, I felt like he built me up. He put me on a pedestal. The way that he talked about me to people was, oh, I would just do anything in the world for her. I just love her so much. But then behind the scenes, he would be passive aggressive and kind of like just almost like he would make a disgusted comment towards me. And I felt like our whole marriage, I was kind of telling my mom, like, okay, like, I know he says this, but like something's off. Like, I couldn't ever put my finger on what the issue was. So kind of fast forward over the years, and it was like 2016, it was just really getting really hard to maintain it. I mean, this is 16 years of marriage of it just there being really no emotional connection, and him portraying to be this amazing husband and father to everybody around, everybody that could see, on social media. He's just this amazing guy. And then I just look like I'm the unhappy partner,
Yeah.
So it just got to be just too much. So I said, well, why don't let's go talk to somebody. So we went to a marriage counselor. We went twice together. And I really tried to be very careful on how I worded things. I wanted him to go. I wasn't in love with him anymore, but I didn't want to split up my family. I have 2 boys, and the thought of me not being able to be with them or to miss out on things with them, it broke my heart. So I was trying to do everything I could to make the marriage work. It was kind of like a last ditch effort. So we went together twice. I was careful on my, delivery and not just attacking him, but we dug through things and he was uncomfortable with it. So I was going that evening to our 3rd meeting, and he said he didn't want to go anymore. And I said, okay. So I went by myself to talk to her. And so she gave me this piece of paper, and I read the piece of paper, and it had the title on it was emotional abuse. And it was kind of like a checklist. And I went down the list and I was like, whoa. He checked all of them, all of the boxes. And I had no idea what emotional abuse was. Like,
Right.
I didn't research it. I had no idea it even existed.
So your
When I
therapist
read,
gave you that, and that's what made you
yeah,
realize that's what you were going through.
that was the turning point.
That
That
was a
was a
turning
major
point.
turning point for me.
Yeah, it puts a name
Because,
to something when you don't know exactly what it is.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so validating. All of this confusion throughout 20 years we were together, it was validated right there.
Yeah.
Everything that I needed to know. So she gave me the list. I talked to her about it. And then from there, I started my research. I figured out I never really looked into narcissism. I saw that word, and then I just kept reading and reading and reading and reading. And I'm telling you, the education that I got from reading about narcissism and emotional abuse gave me the strength to make my decision to leave, because what I read was they do not change. And I'm an empath. I'm a fixer. I want to help people get better. I want to make the situation better, But when I read that they don't change, I had to make the decision, can I live like this the rest of my life? Or do I want to change and find happiness for myself?
Mm-hmm.
He told me he didn't want to go to counseling anymore. It said it hurt too much for him to go to counseling. And I said, well, maybe it'll hurt less if I just leave. And then the absolute final straw with him was he was building an alliance with my 16-year-old son. I was trying to stay in this marriage to make it work. And for my kids, like I didn't want to miss out on my kids, but I realized the model marriage I was setting, it was I do not want my kids to be in a relationship like this. And so the model I was setting for them wasn't good. It was just doing more harm than good staying in there because they were picking up his traits.
Right,
so
and
I
it's
just
what they'll
decided.
see as the model too, which you don't want to have.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned that he was covert, right? To me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's covert. So my kids and everybody else don't realize what he's doing behind the scenes, right?
Right.
He's telling, he was big on words. So he would say all of the great things, right? So much so that I would even believe him without even seeing the action. So it was a lot of words with no action.
Right.
So my kids would see, he would say to my kids, oh, I just love her so much, this and that. So it was putting me in a bad light in a covert way, because if I'm unhappy, but yet he's doing all of these, saying that he's doing all of these amazing things and he just loves me so much, but here I am unhappy and I look like I'm, down and depressed. Where's the problem, right? Like they can't see for themselves, like what the actual problem is because it's not making sense to them. If he says he's this person, but yet I look like I'm upset. I mean, does that make sense? Like,
yeah, totally.
So that's the covert way is to portray certain persona, but behind the scenes, that's not who you are.
Yeah. So we're going to go over a little bit more of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So before you get into your second emotionally abusive relationship, we haven't had a podcast where we explain covert and overt abuse. So let's talk a little about the difference. But first, remember that we should not be diagnosing anyone or labeling a person that is not being diagnosed. It is important to educate yourself and get potential answers to the whys so you're not mistreated. Also to set boundaries and or remove toxic relationships from our lives and to help you recognize red flags and better navigate potentially unhealthy relationships and interactions. It's also important to be able to recognize the subtle behaviors of a covert narcissist and being aware of these traits that can help empower you. So research credit goes to Psychology Today, WebMD, and an article in Very Well Mind by Jody Clark, LPC, MHSP.
So narcissism is a term that is more than ever commonly used in our everyday language. Narcissism is defined and characterized by an excessive love or admiration for oneself, often to the detriment of others. Common narcissistic traits include having a strong sense of self-importance, experiencing fantasies about fame or glory, exaggerating self-abilities, craving admiration, exploiting others, and lacking empathy. And we just re-released our podcast with Chuck DeGroat on narcissism. If you want to take a listen, podcasts 33 and 34.
So within the definition, it's important to realize that actions and behaviors resulting from narcissistic tendencies encompass an extensive spectrum, from overt, grandiose expressions to more covert, unobtrusive forms.
In the field of psychology, behavior can be described as overt or covert. Overt behaviors are those that can be easily observed by others, such as those of the traditional narcissistic described earlier. Covert behaviors, however, those that are more subtle and a bit less obvious.
Covert narcissism, a subtle and often insidious form of self-absorption, often lurks undetected beneath the surface of seemingly cordial interactions, which is how and why it can be so difficult to spot, yet is so impactful. Passive self-importance is one of their characteristics. So where the more overt, extroverted narcissists will be obvious in their elevated sense of self and their arrogance when interacting with others, the covert narcissist may be less obvious. The impacts of covert narcissism can negatively influence our boundaries, our sense of self-trust, and our emotional regulation skills. A covert narcissist is someone who craves admiration and importance, lacking empathy toward others, but may act in a different way than an overt narcissist. They may exhibit symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder, but often hide the more obvious signs of the condition. While it can be more difficult to recognize, covert narcissism can be just as destructive as more overt narcissistic behaviors. Both overt and covert narcissists navigate the world with a sense of self-importance and fantasize about success and grandeur.
The covert narcissists often portray themselves as introverted, shy, or even selfless individuals, when in reality, their motivations are deeply rooted in a desire for admiration, attention, and control within their relationship. The overt narcissist is easily identified because they tend to be loud, arrogant, insensitive to the needs of others, and always thirsty for compliments, and marked by grandiosity and attention-seeking behavior. Their behaviors can be easily observed by others and tend to show up as big in a room. Overt narcissists demonstrate more extroverted behaviors in their interactions with others. The covert narcissist certainly craves importance or narcissistic supply and thirsts for admiration, but it can look different to those around them. They might give backhanded compliments or purposely minimize their accomplishments or talents so that people will often offer them reassurance of how talented they are. The reality for both the overt and covert narcissists is that they have a fragile sense of self.
Some examples of the common signs and signals might include: number 1, playing the victim. Covert narcissists often position themselves as the victim in situations, seeking attention and validation from others, including their children. Number 2 is gaslighting. Covert narcissists may manipulate others into doubting their own experiences or perceptions, often to maintain control and influence over them. Lack of empathy is number 3. People with covert narcissism may struggle to understand or acknowledge the feelings and needs of others, instead prioritizing their own feelings and needs. Number 4 is their passive-aggressive behavior, Maya talked about earlier. Covert narcissists may use subtle tactics such as withholding affection or giving someone the silent treatment in order to control and manipulate them. And number 5 is projection. Covert narcissists may project their own faults, insecurities, and shortcomings onto others, often to avoid taking responsibility for their own behavior and vulnerabilities. And these are just a handful of ways that the covert narcissism can manifest. So we just went over those 5 things. Does anybody have any comments on those? Playing the victim, gaslighting, lack of empathy, passive-aggressive behavior, and projection.
In my experience, all of those are spot on. He was always the victim. The gaslighting, that took a while for me to realize that was even a thing. I remember at one point he said something to me, and I know that he said or did something, and he completely said, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." Mm-hmm. Even though I knew that happened, it created it was such a memorable experience, because I think that's when I realized, like, whoa, like he totally just gaslighted me and messing with my mind.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah,
everyone should watch the movie.
Yes.
Have you watched the movie?
I have. Yes.
Yeah, it just shows it so well, because it is subtle, and you see how she feels so crazy.
I didn't even know what gaslighting was till my therapist told me. When I was telling her what was going on, she was like, he's gaslighting you. And I'm like, what is that? And then I had to research it. I know what she's talking about. But I'm thinking that some of these covert traits also, I think the grandiose narcissist has all these as well. I feel like I feel like my ex was all this. Yeah. And the grandiose as well. Go ahead, Maya. You can go ahead and continue.
So do covert narcissists know what they're doing? Well, they may be aware on some level that their behaviors have a negative impact on other people. Narcissists also tend to lack self-awareness and insight, because they often believe they deserve the attention and accolades they seek. They may see nothing wrong with their behavior as long as it achieves the intended results.
The covert narcissist can be difficult to recognize at the outset of a relationship. Many people have fallen victim to the manipulative behaviors of a covert narcissist without realizing what was happening until they're already in emotional pain.
It might be more accurate to suggest that the extroverted, overt narcissist would be a lot easier to see coming than the introverted, covert narcissist. In relationships, covert narcissists cause hurt due to a sense of a lack of partnership or reciprocity in the relationship. I said that word. Yeah. Sorry, I had trouble saying that once on another podcast. Types of comments you might hear from a covert narcissist include: I'm too good for this. I shouldn't have to tolerate these people. I deserve all of the good things life has to offer. Other people have it better than me, and it isn't fair. I deserve more because I'm better than other people. People never appreciate how special I am. I can't believe you did that. Don't do that again. You should feel ashamed. Remember when I helped you a few years ago? You owe me a favor. I'm the best you'll ever have. You'll never find anyone else like me. No one else would give you the time of day. You should be grateful I stick around. I was just joking. I can't believe you took that seriously.
None of those really sound like things I would hear, but I feel like there was a lot of joking. There was a lot of really hurtful things, and he made me feel like, you're just so sensitive, And it's like, no, these are really hurtful things.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Maya?
Yes. So those aren't familiar in my situation. Oh, the one, I'm the best you'll ever have. You'll never find anyone else like me. He definitely had said, nobody will love you the way that I love you. And they flipped that one in there early on. So then you believe it the entire time. So then that kind of replays in your mind.
Yeah. My ex used to say to me, I'm the best person that's ever walked into your life. Remember him saying that when we first met. And I thought, is that okay to say that? Like,
right.
I know I'm the best person that's ever going to walk into your life.
Right.
I would say the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You're
the
up.
best person to walk out. So blaming and shaming. Shaming is a tactic that narcissists may use to secure their sense of an elevated position in relation to others. The overt, extroverted narcissists might be more obvious in their approach to gaining leverage, such as explicitly putting you down, being rude, criticizing you, and being sarcastic. The introverted covert narcissist may have a more gentle approach to explain why something is your fault, and they are not to blame. They might even pretend to be a victim of your behavior or engage in emotional abuse to put themselves in a position to receive reassurance and praise from you. Whether overt or covert, the goal is to make the other person feel small.
It's creating confusion. Although they are not always sneaky, some covert narcissists can take joy in creating confusion. They may not engage in blaming or shaming, but instead causing people to question their perceptions and second guess themselves, which is gaslighting. This is another way to create leverage between them and another person. A covert narcissist needs to use tactics like this to elevate themselves and maintain power in the interaction. If they can get you to question your perceptions, it allows them the opportunity to manipulate and exploit you more.
Procrastination and disregard. Because their need for self-importance reigns supreme, covert narcissists will do whatever they need to do in order to keep the focus on themselves. So where an extroverted narcissist will blatantly push you aside or manipulate you to accomplish their goal, the covert narcissist is a professional at not acknowledging you at all.
That's very true.
It's not a coincidence that narcissists in general tend to gravitate toward interacting with caring and compassionate people. The covert narcissist recognizes those opportunities for manipulation as well.
They have no problem letting you know that you are not important. Rather than explicitly telling you that you're not important, they might stand you up on a date, wait until the last minute to respond to texts or emails, always show up late, or never make confirmed plans at all. There's no regard for your time or interests, leaving you feeling small, unimportant, and irrelevant.
In general, narcissists are not givers. They find it difficult to put energy into anything that doesn't serve them in some way. A covert narcissist might present themselves in a way that looks like they are giving, but their giving behavior always has the intent of getting something in return.
Narcissists are inept at building and nurturing emotional bonds with others. The covert narcissist is no different. So although they may appear kinder and less obnoxious than their extroverted counterpart, they're not emotionally accessible or responsive either.
You will likely not receive many compliments from a covert narcissist. They're always focused on staying elevated to maintain their sense of self-importance. So it's easy to understand how a covert narcissist would find it difficult to compliment you. There's usually little regard for your talents or abilities.
Just as with an overt narcissist, you will likely find yourself doing most of the heavy emotional lifting in a relationship with a covert narcissist. Although the covert narcissist is more likely to appear emotionally accessible, it tends to be a performance and is usually done with intent to exploit or eventually leave the other person feeling small through disregard, blaming, or shaming.
Since one of the hallmark traits of narcissistic personality disorder is the lack of empathy, a covert narcissist is not going to be emotionally responsive to their partner in a healthy way.
Covert narcissists often behave in passive-aggressive ways. They disregard others while exaggerating their own importance. They also blame, shame, and ignore the feelings and needs of the other person.
In other relationships, such as those with partners, parents, siblings, or other family members, covert narcissists might do any of the following. Number 1, display a lack of empathy for the feelings, thoughts, and needs of others. Number 2, use guilt trips and shame to control others. Number 3, expect others to care for them and solve their problems. Number 4, gaslighting behaviors such as being critical, but making it sound like it's coming from a place of concern. Number 5, take advantage of other people's vulnerabilities. And number 6, dismiss or deny other people's feelings, emotions, or experiences. And last, number 7, respond to others with passive-aggressive behaviors.
How to deal with a covert narcissist. You may currently be in a personal relationship with a covert narcissist, whether it be a family member, a coworker, or a significant other. Although you cannot control what a narcissist does, you can control how you behave and interact with them. There are steps that you can take to protect yourself from covert narcissistic abuse.
Avoid taking it personally. When dealing with a narcissist, whether covert or overt, their manipulative behavior can feel very personal. The lack of regard, sense of entitlement, patterns of manipulation, and deceptive behaviors can feel very personal when on the receiving end.
No matter how painful the behaviors might feel in the moment, it's important to remember that they have nothing to do with you.
A narcissist behaves in negative ways because of something unhealthy within them, not because there's something unhealthy about you.
It's okay to look at the situation and interactions in regard to how you contribute to them. However, it's important when dealing with a narcissist that you let them own their part.
Narcissists want you to take it personally because that's how they maintain leverage. Remember, a narcissist feels small, so they have to make themselves big somehow.
Set boundaries. Narcissists do not have healthy boundaries. Because covert narcissists lack empathy, have a strong sense of entitlement, and exploit others, boundaries are something that gets in the way of their goals. The more you can practice setting boundaries with a narcissist, the more consistently you are conveying to them that their tactics are not working. Setting boundaries can be very difficult, particularly with a narcissist. Remember that boundaries are just a way for you to let someone else know what your values are. Consider what is important to you, what your values are, and work to create boundaries to support them. Understanding why you are setting particular boundaries can help you have more confidence in establishing them and can keep you on track if someone attempts to violate or disregard your boundaries. And I'll also just add that, they're not going to like boundaries, so that should be a clue. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, this is, they're going to rise up against that because it's like what they're saying there.
And what's coming to mind for me is the boundaries with a narcissist are extremely important. If it's like a family member or someone, you're going to end up having to see that you can't have no contact with.
Yeah.
But because narcissists don't really change if it's a romantic relationship, I think for me, no contact was just much easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's with those family members or people so when I'm looking at this and reading it, I'm like, yeah, this is really important for people that are in your family or friend or someone that you will have to have contact, but you got to have those boundaries up.
Yeah.
Advocate for yourself. When interacting with a covert narcissist, it can be easy to lose your voice because the patterns of interaction are so manipulative. It may take time for you to realize that you're not advocating for yourself. Take time to tune back in with yourself, who you are and what you are about. Take stock of your values, your goals, your talents. Strengthening your relationship with yourself is key in being able to speak up during interactions with a narcissist. When advocating for yourself, the narcissist gets a chance to meet the part of you that is aware and knowledgeable of their tactics, making it less appealing for them to keep trying those things with you. And I will add to that, it makes it less appealing for them to keep trying those things with you, but that doesn't mean that they won't keep trying. Because once you're aware of it, they start to scramble. They start to get worried because their tactics aren't working anymore. So they'll pull out all the stops.
Yeah, they may change tactics.
Yeah, you see the panic on them.
Yeah.
But this reminds me so much of you that I thought of you while you were reading this, Maya, is you probably really lost your voice in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I feel that it is so important to write things down. Remind yourself, set a list, write down a list of your attributes, the things that make you you, the reason they probably wanted you, because you're kind, you're an empath, you're
Right.
caring, you're loving, write all of these things down and then ask yourself, so I'm this person, do I deserve what I'm getting back? So I think it's so key to write things down and
Yeah,
keep
and that's
reading
what,
them.
and the dynamics of abuse with Bob Hamp. That's exactly what he
know.
says.
I always think about that now
Yeah.
because I love that you have that on a trailer. So if anyone wants to hear that, I remember sometimes I play that over and over and over. But he basically says it's not that there was something wrong with you. It's that there was something right with you. It's because you are compassionate and caring that they're drawn to you. And I don't know, the way he says it is just so validating and so affirming that I can just sit and just like, okay, listen to it, repeat, listen to it again over and over and over.
It's like a minute long. So
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
You gotta listen to that one for sure. So the next thing is creating a healthy distance. This is huge. Being in a relationship with a covert narcissist can feel frustrating and overwhelming. There are times when it can be difficult to create distance between you and that person, such as a family member or coworker. Limiting personal interactions, asking to be moved to a different location in your office, taking breaks at a different time, or simply cutting off contact might be what's necessary if you're being hurt by someone's narcissism. The goal of creating distance is not to hurt the other person. The goal is to protect yourself and to create space for you to heal.
Yeah. When to seek help. If someone you know shows signs of covert narcissism that are creating distress or affecting areas of your life, encourage them to talk to their healthcare provider. A doctor or therapist can recommend treatments that can help address their symptoms and improve their ability to cope. You may also find it helpful to talk to a therapist about your experiences.
Covert narcissism may be less apparent than overt narcissism, but this doesn't mean that it's any less harmful. If you know someone who is a covert narcissist, take steps to protect yourself and your emotional well-being. Learn to recognize the signs, don't take their behavior personally, and create distance between you and that person to help establish clear boundaries.
I would always just add that I think as a Christian, to me, what was just so monumental in my life was just God validated me. And in the beginning, I feel like things that were said to me, I would take that to heart like it was from God. And then I started going, that doesn't add up. And so it's so important to know what God expects of you and what the word of God says. God just started validating me on things. And I started realizing, no, I don't think that's true. And so I think that's just, to me, that was a huge part of my healing, was understanding what God said about me and said about what really knowing what the Bible said, so it can't be twisted and used against me. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your second emotionally abusive relationship now, Mia, and how it differed from the first?
Yes, this relationship had characteristics of a sociopath.
To be continued. Stay tuned for next week's part 2. You don't want to miss it. And where the more overt, extroverted narcissist will be obnoxious, or wait, obvious. Well, I was thinking of my ex, how obnoxious he was. I said, not. Sorry. Okay, where was I at?
And I would also, excuse me, add. Sorry, I always have that happen. Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.